I guess my question is there actually any difference between a problem that we self-invent versus a real problem? Like, aren't they both problems? The thing though is, like, when there's 50 people working together, the amount of sort of invented problems as a result of what people bring to the table on a given day, maybe they didn't get enough sleep, maybe they're not feeling well, maybe they're stressed because there's a camera in the room, maybe you know,
there's a lot of variables.
There's so many things that could throw somebody off for a moment or a day.
I just wanted to confirm, because I was just like, wait, I'm like, we followed protocol to a T, so I'm like, did we do something wrong?
Well, this morning we had the same kind of, I mean, like when Mesa wrote those problems, it wasn't dissimilar to probably how you guys were feeling this morning when there was something weird going on with the sourdough starter, and you're like, well, what's going on? Why is it not normal? And it's interesting because you're working with yesterday's information. If you weren't here yesterday, or you know, or whatever happened while you weren't here, it all kind of ends up creating more potential anxiety for a moment.
I think my mind just jumped to, oh no, the starter's not ready, it's gonna be a long day.
Does it jump to like the last time you had a problem? Like, because I mean, last time we had a starter issue,
yeah, we had to improvise, and
there was like extra shifts that were added, so it's very understandable why you might get a little anxious in that moment too.
I just think the connotation in my mind jumps to like the bad scenario.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
I have found though, like a natural human instinct to jump to kind of like the worst case scenario, and I think we do it as like a protection mechanism. We'd rather know like we've got to fight right now, or we've got to flee, you know, fight or flight. But if you can train yourself to still approach it calm, well, you can fight more scenarios. But that, I don't know if that's a better thing or not, but
I mean, my life's motto is optimism triumphs today, but I still jump to like the negative situations where I just want to be prepared.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
I don't think it's like an issue of like fear. It's more just being prepared. Because even if you prepare for like the worst case scenario and the worst case scenario doesn't happen, at least you're like, okay.
One thing that's a little bit challenging though is recognizing how our approach to something might impact everybody else's approach to something too. Let's say somebody's in charge and like they're having a bad day because of something, you know, that has nothing to do with work. It's amazing how much all of that ends up transferring to everybody around them. Like,
oh yeah.
If somebody in charge is anxious, like everybody in the room all of a sudden is anxious. Have you ever noticed that?
It's true, yeah.
But then how does somebody in charge deal with their own anxiety, like their own fear response, given it like has that kind of wave effect?
Yeah, because if your leaders are anxious or nervous, then yeah. I feel like that's the tricky part. It doesn't translate well to the staff.
I had a guy write me this morning from Australia, who I've actually been in contact with for a number of years, but he doesn't usually contact me directly, just like in groups. And he was anxious over his sourdough starter and maintaining. And this is a professional baker that owns a sourdough bakery.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, the stories we tell ourselves can be like really, really powerful. It seems like we can kind of set ourselves up for anxiety just by like telling ourselves stories.
No, yeah, I agree with that, because I feel like if your subconscious is in a positive place and you speak to yourself positively, you kind of mitigate those issues. Versus kind of diving more into it, it doesn't necessarily help.
Something kind of interesting is I learned once that everything to do with making sourdough bread historically was kind of like it had like a religious or mythological property to it, because people didn't understand the science behind why the actual dough like rose the day before. They thought, oh well, maybe it's some sort of like a miracle because I prayed enough, or I did the right kind of chants to the gods. Well, it's interesting, like talking to this guy from Australia today, because he was worried about how his starter wasn't performing well. It's winter time there, and he was mentioning that like he has these kind of peculiar feeding rituals, which the original owner of his bakery taught him. They're like not normal, not like the 1-2-2 that we do here. But it's funny, like sometimes we have these superstitions and we stick with them.
Yeah, you keep following it. Yeah. Like, what kind of irregular practices? What do you mean? I'm curious now.
Well, so he feeds his starter 3 times in a 24-hour cycle.
3 times?
3 times. And the room temperature is relatively cold. It's wintertime. And he's noticing that his starter is basically not performing as well as it does in the summertime. But he seems really concerned about like making the starter too acidic, which is kind of like one of those fears that bakers have been spreading to themselves, like not to let your starter over acidify. And I sort of wonder, I'm not there, so it's hard to diagnose something when you're not in the room, but just like it was hard for me to receive a message this morning from Logan, like, oh, there's a starter issue at Shea, until you're in the room, it's like, you don't really know. But I wonder if he's overcorrecting for the acidification of the starter. Like he's feeding too much, and then the starter is staying too cold for too short of a period of time.
And not enough time to proof or ferment, right?
Right. So that was my theory in thinking about it, but I don't know for a fact without being there. It's just, I was thinking about it, like whatever it is, it's probably just a human telling themselves some story that is partially true and partially not, and responding to kind of anxiety and emotions. Seems to be half of our battle as a bakery, is like dealing with the human emotions of it.
The human element. 30-minute timer. That does sound irregular though, 3 times a day?
Well, the other thing he said that was irregular was that he said they don't really bake on the weekends, like, I don't know, Sunday through Tuesday or something, and they don't feed their starter during that time at all, and then they just go straight to mixing with it. It's like if we kept our starter in the fridge cold for 4 days and then just mixed with it. We do that in an emergency, but we don't really ever do that as a test batch.
I was going to say, that doesn't sound too practical.
And I asked him about it, and he said, well, yeah, but feeding it any differently doesn't really work with our schedules. It's like, yeah, no shit. That's one of the struggles with sourdough, is like biology doesn't really have a 40-hour work week.
I know, right? It doesn't care about your timeline. It's just like, this is how it works.
Sort of on a related note, I'm dealing with that with the oven in Mesa. I haven't actually been able to spend a shift just baking on the oven in Mesa, but I'm getting reports about how weird it's functioning. And I don't know if it's because of what we've done to adjust it because of our own like assumptions, or whether it's really functioning weird. Like originally somebody temped all the decks recently and decided that they weren't consistent temperatures, and so then they modified the temperature settings for each of the decks.
You can do that?
Yeah, like, I mean, they just adjust. They're like baking sourdough 50 degrees warmer in like the 4th deck because they think that the deck is colder than...
I see what you mean, like overcorrecting or overcompensating.
And so then now there's some like inconsistency problems with the actual bake itself. Like some loaves are coming out really dark, other loaves aren't baking, quite to the right. And the question is, what caused the problem? The oven itself or the overcorrection,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Like, was it a bad assumption to begin with that, the oven was inconsistent in temperature setting, and thus we're changing this deck by 50 degrees and this deck by
and
40, and then causing more problems.
Yeah, I see what you mean. This is why the machines, when they become sentient, they're gonna probably demolish the human race.
What's strange is that, from my perspective, I have to both be empathetic and skeptical at the same time. I have to, like, the people facing the issue at the oven want to know that I hear them and that I'm going to help resolve their issue. But at the same time, I have to decide, is it an issue that they might have self-created? But I can't say that in that way without kind of making somebody feel like I'm, you know, not being empathetic, or it's kind of a weird...
It's a tightrope to walk on. Yeah.
Weird tightrope. Sort of on a related topic, reflecting on how when we work together in teams and things happen in our days, we need some outlet, some place to share our anxieties. I think it's just, again, in our nature that we sort of like to share what's going on in order to sort of center ourselves again. Oftentimes this comes out in the wrong way, you know, like people will start gossiping, or people will start, you know, because it's natural, like something happens interpersonally, and then you just wanting to get it off your chest with the people that are around you. But oftentimes it sort of leads to other problems with leadership or running a team. It's interesting because you still need to remain human. You need the ability to get things out, but it's usually not appropriate to destabilize the team that you're working with. And so I think one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn over and over and over again myself over the years is, if you don't leave space for yourself outside of work, if you just dive all the way into your work 100% of the time, 7 days a week, you don't actually have the right balance to do it well. It's just a matter of time before lines are crossed, because you're not giving your own human what your human needs, which includes some time to recharge. I'm regularly thinking about these things because of the fact that we're constantly trying to keep everybody at Proof functioning well and in a healthy way, and it's no easy feat. Everybody is learning the lessons that we've been learning for the last several years, lessons that it's not like we've learned all the way. You know, just because I've been baking for 7 years doesn't mean I have perfect time management skills, doesn't mean I go to bed, you know, at the exact right hour each day, doesn't mean that life doesn't get in the way. And when life gets in the way of a number of people that are just learning how to cope within a new craft, it's sort of interesting that, like, collision, the intersection of all of that, is where we exist on a daily basis. Something I've been reflecting on in recent times is how you almost have to intentionally recenter yourself around what you're actually doing, which is making bread, because all the sort of stories around what you're doing sort of take the dominant position of the day's narrative, whether it be the thing that breaks, or whether it be the inspector that shows up unannounced, or whether it be the interpersonal problem between this person and that person. Those stories tend to become dominant in a given day. And so one of the reasons that getting into bread was appealing to me, and I think it seems to be universal. During the global pandemic, so many people were baking sourdough. It seemed to be this grounding thing. And so perhaps by just focusing on the actual bread itself, by, you know, sort of losing yourself in the actual motions of the day, you can find that grounding effect and have some therapy as you do your work. It's easiest to score your loaves when they're cold. We eat with our eyes first.
You have to understand your audience enough to be able to say, like, I'm going to be charging a lot of money for my super crazy cool thing, or it's so cool and so creative that only you can do it, and then you don't stand a chance of scaling it.
Let's go over what it's like to build a bakery from one person to many.